Hey, what's up? This is Spartacus with the Goblins vs. Gnomes preview of the cards we've seen so far for the Warlock and the Shaman. I'm gonna actually start with the Warlock because the Shaman cards I really want to dive, a couple of them I really want to dive deep into, um, as I have a lot of opinions on them. And the Warlock cards are fairly straightforward. A lot of cool cards here. Fell Heart, or I'm gonna start with Fell Cannon. Sorry, a lot of Fell. Maybe that's a theme. Fell Cannon is a fantastic card. It's a 4 mana 3/5, which is good on its own, obviously. And at the end of your turn, you deal 2 damage to a non-mech minion. So randomly. So you throw it, it's a mech, so you throw it in a mech deck, obviously. And then it'll hit, hopefully your opponent's minions if they're not running. 90 mechs, and then it's just kind of how am I going to put it? It's like a demolisher with much better stats, and it only hits minions on your opponent's side of the field. Like, that's, if you have mechs out, that's pretty sweet. Really good card, actually. Someone was telling, or I heard that the Warlock mech is supposed to be the most powerful, so as if we need any more powerful Warlocks, but there you have it. And in Arena, this is also a great card. Even you can kind of place things or you can kind of put things down to make sure things are always in your favor. And if you have mechs, this is even better. But if not, it's like randomly hits a minion, unless your opponent has mechs. So it's still a pretty good card. It's got great stats, like not great, but solid. The 3/5 for 4 mana is a solid stat line. So this is going to be a good card all around. Falcan. Bell Heart, on the other hand, is, it's interesting. It's kind of like Demon Fire. Like it gives you it gives you either the buff or the damage. So you deal 5 damage to a minion. If it's a friendly demon, however, you give it +5/+5. The fact that it says demon is why this card I don't think is very good. If it didn't say demon, if it's a friendly minion, give it 5/+5. That's really good. Then it's like Blessing of Kings, and it's like 5 mana for a 5/5 charge. But because it says demon, I mean, obviously this would be in some sort of demonologist, demon lock deck or whatever. But it just seems too clunky because a lot of the demons do cost a lot, and this also costs a lot, so you kind of want low cost spells with that. To deal 5 damage to a minion, I mean, they already have Shadow Bolt, which deals 4 damage for 3 mana, and so far, which deals 4 damage for no mana. So I don't think that the deal damage to a minion is good enough. If it was like, if you could deal damage to the face, or if this was just a friendly minion, this would be a completely different card. But because of the specifics on the card, I don't think it's very good. It's also why I don't think it's that good in Arena, because the better part of this card is the buff, not the damage. 5 mana for 5 damage to a minion is not that great. The buff is what's important, and in Arena you can't always count on having a demon out. I mean, it's not terrible, but it's not great. And I don't think it's actually that good in Constructed. Could be wrong. You could use it to make some crazy demons, some crazy buffed up demons. I mean, the thing that comes to mind is if you Doomguard and then you don't discard this and you throw this on Doomguard, you can hit 10, which is insane, but you have to not discard it. It just seems like something that won't happen enough. So I don't think Fell Heart is actually a very good card. Okay, up to the Shamans now. Shaman, there are a few interesting cards. I'm going to start with the ones that are least interesting, to me at least. The Whirling Zap-O-Matic, 2 mana, 3/2, vanilla, Wind Fury. What? What? How is that fit? It's fine. Chances are if the Whirling Zap-O-Matic is going to trade with something, it is going to die, because it has 2 health. It's got to trade with a 1 health or 1 attack thing, so it can't, like, unless you put like a Divine Shield on it, it can't quite hit and then hit, so get a double trade, which is what would be really valuable. Also, that's what it is. What it can do, though, is if it goes uncontested, it can just start smacking the face for a lot of damage. So it can really be a good rushdown card. It's also a mech, so in some sort of Shaman rush mech deck, this might turn out to be really good. it's kind of got a you know, kind of implied taunt on it. You gotta get rid of it, or else it's just gonna smack you around. And if it does just trade, if that's what you choose to do, you can hit to the face for 3 first and then trade. That's always nice. Um, so there is that. It's definitely like a good card, and it's a solid card in Arena as well. Um, but it's just not as spectacular as some people were thinking it was. When it's like, oh, Wind Fury with those stat lines, like that's way too good. I don't think it actually is. I think it's a solid card for sure. I'm gonna jump over to the Dunmal Shaman here. This is an ogre, so it has the 50% chance to attack the wrong enemy. 4 mana, 5/4. It's actually with the overload one, so it's technically a 5 mana 5/4, which isn't great, but it's got Wind Fury and a 50% chance to attack the wrong enemy. I have no idea. This card could just run wild. I mean, you could smack face twice in a turn for 10, which is nuts. Or it might attack the wrong minion. Seems a little unreal. The fact that you attack twice and both times it could go wrong means this card can just, it's like a rampaging ogre, just stupid and just smacking things around. It's 4 health, so it might be able to survive, but that isn't the highest amount of health, so I don't exactly know if it will be good enough to survive hitting 2 things. I think it's definitely a solid card. I don't know if it'll see play in Constructed, but I think it's definitely a solid card in Arena. I think it can do a lot of work for you in Arena, and you know that Wind Fury with that amount of health can definitely trade and do some things. The problem is maybe it won't trade the way you want it to. So in that way, it's a liability. But it's interesting, and it'll make for some exciting games and some hair-pulling moments. But I still don't think it'll actually see much play in Constructed. I can't really think. Maybe you're just trying to beat them down. Can't really think of a situation. Okay, I'm going to jump back to Crackle here. Crackle is a really interesting card to me. So I was thinking about this card a lot. Trump said this card's like it's going to replace Lightning Bolt. It's better. When I first saw this card, I didn't think it was very good at all. Because when you're trying to get rid of a minion, you need to count on consistency and deal 3 to 6 damage for 3 mana. It's just such a big. That's a 4. There's 4 different damage, which you could pull, and while the average is 4.5, doesn't mean you're always going to get it. It's tough to count on. I think this card's fine if you're hitting the face, but when you're removing minions, you need to know. And while you can calculate, you can be like, well, if I hit 3, then this is what I have to do, and I get that's fine. If you compare it to Lava Burst, which is 5 mana, I'm gonna ignore the overloads. It's 3 mana, overloads 2. It does 5 damage. I think this is strictly worse. I don't think it will replace Lava Burst in decks where Lava Burst is used, which are really bursty decks, because when you do use Lava Burst to clear a minion, you count on that 5 damage. And I think that it's just risky to go for, a 5 health minion with this and be like, oh, I hope it hits. And, like, need that, you know what I mean? Like, you need that much damage, and you don't have an alternative. Like, if you have this and you don't have an alternative, and you need that amount of damage, and it doesn't hit, that's really bad. So I think that, I like reliability, how would I put it like that? Now, in terms of replacing Lightning Bolt, that's interesting. Because Shaman do have 6 1-mana spells, and the argument is that this can fill that. It's only 1 mana more, and, it can technically do more damage, but I have a problem with counting on this to do more than 3 damage ever. I think that's my issue with it. I can never count on this card to do more than 3 damage, and that's why I don't like it. Other people are probably more willing to take the risk. I'm not. In terms of minion removal, I feel like I need the amount of damage I'm guaranteed, or at least a variance of 1, not this high of a variance. Hitting the face, like I said, is fine because, sometimes you'll get more damage and that's great, but if not, then you can count on the lowest amount. Then again, I look back and I say, okay, but Lightning Bolt only does 3, which is the lowest that this does, so maybe you'll get more. I don't know. I think I prefer to just take the 2 mana for 3 and know what I'm getting than take the 3 mana for this variance, because I need the reliability. Other people might not be like me, and I think this is a really contentious card. I think Crackle is really interesting. I don't know what the hell's going to happen with it. It could be in every deck, it could be in no decks. I think it's a solid arena card, probably. I have no idea, though, in terms of constructed. And it's a really baffling card to me, and it's really interesting. And I'm going to leave it at that, and there's going to be a lot of opinions about this card, and there are a lot of opinions, so I guess the best way is just to test it, because right now, this is the only card that really has me dumbfounded and saying, I don't know, I have no idea. So that's Crackle for you. Ancestor's Call. Ancestor's Call has immediately gotten the, oh, this is a crap card, stigma. And I was saying in a previous video that epic cards, a lot of them, aren't good on their own. They need to kind of be built a deck around, and this is one of them. You can build like a hand shaman, and just you use your totems for, you know, they're your low-cost minions, and then you just have a bunch of legendaries, and on turn 4 you throw this out and you drop down Ysera. You know what I mean? By the way, it reads, put a random minion from each player's hand into the battlefield for 4 mana. The way you get the advantage with this is to have a bigger separation of your cards' cost, of their cards' cost that comes out. So if you get, you know, a 7 mana minion and they get a 3 mana minion, that's a 4 mana difference, so it's, you know, normal value. If you get a 5 mana difference, then you get value, and if it's less, then you lose value. There's also the argument, though, that having a big minion out early is tougher to deal with. So, no matter what comes out, like if you throw down a Boulder Fist Ogre and they throw down a, which is a 6/7, they throw down a Bloodfen Raptor, which is just a vanilla 3/2, then, you know, that the Bloodfen Raptor trading into the Boulder Fist Ogre actually makes the Boulder Fist Ogre a 6/4, which is better than 4 mana, technically, because a 4 mana card doesn't cost 6/4. There aren't any out there. So that's an interesting theory, and it's really interesting to see how this card will work. I think it's very poor in Arena because you can't count on having big cards unless even like a 5 drop. This isn't worth, you know, like you really want to get like a 7 or an 8 drop out with this. So it's going to be really fun to try and build decks around this card. You just load up with a ton of spells, you know, and your low cost minions are your totems and your Spirit Wolves, which is a spell, and then you can be overloaded and play this and then drop down big minions, which is really cool. And if you're against aggro, you can kind of count on them using small minions. And I think that this card is going to be better than people think it will. Will the deck work? I have no idea. But it allows you to get cards out for a lower amount of mana than you should, which means you can play other cards in that turn. So you can actually play like a, I don't know, a Kel'Thuzad and reincarnate it, or an Earth Elemental without the, you don't get the overload on it, and then you can put the Ancestral Spirit on it, so it has Death Rattle resummon the minion, and there's a lot of, this is just such a cool card, and I don't want to dismiss it like so many people are, because I think that there's a lot of potential in this card, and I'm really looking forward to hopefully getting it in the pack, because I don't spend a lot of money on the game, and getting to play with it. So that is the Shaman and Warlock preview. Then you know what? Screw it, I'm going to move on to the Warrior preview right in this video. Okay. The Warrior card previews. Warrior is the class I play the most in Constructed. Very familiar with it. And I like it a lot. It's just, it's a fun class to try and control the board with. A lot of big minions in there, a lot of fun games. So left to right, the Ogre Warwall, which is another Ogre card. 50% chance to attack the wrong enemy. 3 mana, 4/2, obviously great value, but the 50% chance, who knows. Being constructed, this would only go in an aggro deck probably. There are a lot of weapons already. So this would just be used to try and hit face. And if not, then you clear out enemies with it because it misses. It can also bypass taunts to hit face, which is quite interesting. But I don't know. I really don't think this card is going to be used very much in Constructed. I don't. I just feel like you need more consistency. Maybe that's just me. Maybe I don't like these hitting the wrong enemy chances. Maybe I don't think that that 1 mana value is worth it. And other people might. In Arena, it's probably much better because, see, in Constructed, you would put this in and you like replace other weapons that you would have in your deck because you can't have too many weapons or else you'll have too many in your hand. But in Arena, you want a lot of weapons for the most part, and you're looking for them, and sometimes you don't get enough. But this will have one more weapon, and be pretty good early game to clear out some minions. Hopefully you don't miss. And it can bypass taunts, which I think is a really big thing, and I think that's really unique about this 50% chance. So who knows? I don't see it being used a lot in Constructed. I think it's a solid Arena card. And that's the Ogre Warmaul. Screw Jank Clunker. It's a mech minion, 4 mana, 2/5. It's like the, what's the other 4 mana, 2/5? The Ancient Mage. Battle Cry, give a friendly mech 2/2. So if you have a mech out, this is basically like a 4/7, which is insane for 4 mana. And 2/2 of that has charge too, if the other mech was already on the field and you play this on turn 4. This is a really good card. People might look at it and think it's not that great. I think it's really good. In mech decks, it's going to be fantastic. In Arena, if you have it, I think this will be average in Arena. Depends how many decks, how many mechs you have. But the 4 mana 4/7 is unheard of, and it's a really solid stat line. So I think that this card is it's very solid. Just a solid rare card and a good mech synergistic card for Warrior. Shield Maiden here is a 6 mana 5/5, and it has the Battle Cry gain 5 armor. I think this is a bad card. I think that it's below average in Arena because it doesn't pass the vanilla of 6/5/5, and in Arena, health is more of a resource. It doesn't affect the board, so gaining 5 armor doesn't matter that much because you usually don't have Shield Slam, which is the only thing that you can use your armor for so far as a warrior to affect the board. And then in Constructed, at least in the current warrior deck, you can't fit this thing in. First of all, it's way too slow. Second of all, the 6th slot is already taken up by Karn Sylvanas, and you already have shield blocks to gain armor. You have armor smiths to gain armor. You don't need this. Maybe you could replace it for an armor smith with it if you want to go really late game and you don't want like early drops. But armor smiths, I think, are just too good. And they're just better cards to replace it with. I mean, it is maybe in the future armor will become more valuable and this card will become more valuable. But right now, combining it with Shield Slam, for example, it's 7 mana. Shield Block gives you 5 and allows you to cycle. I think that's better. It's a quicker card. This card is just really slow. It's in a 6 slot that is just too full right now, and I don't think it's going to see any action in Constructed, and in Arena I think it's below par. So that's the Shield Maiden. Bouncing Blade, the final card of all these GVGs so far. Bouncing Blade. Is Bouncing Blade my favorite card revealed so far? It's close to it. Then Sneeze Old Shredder. Bouncing Blade. Deal 1 damage to a random minion. Repeat until a minion dies. So, if the board is full, it's just going to go bouncing all over the place and smack minions with 1 damage each, and then as soon as a minion dies, it'll stop. It is an incredible card design. I love it. I think it is so cool. It's 3 mana, and it can be 3 mana hard removal if the only minion on the board is your opponent. So if your opponent throws on Ysera on an empty board, Bouncing Blade, and the Ysera gets hit 12 times and it dies. Which is awesome. So it's got that aspect to it, which I think is really cool. Also, in Warrior, sometimes you like your minions getting hit, like an Acolyte. So you have a bunch of things down, you throw down an Acolyte, and you throw down, or your opponent has a bunch of things down, you throw down an Acolyte, you throw down this. It hits your Acolyte a couple times and kills one of your opponent's minions, you get to draw and kill a minion. That's awesome. I think this card's going to see a lot of play. It'll replace cards like Whirlwind. It's a bit more mana, a little bit slower, but it has much higher potential in the fact that it can be hard removal, which is good because right now warriors only have 4 ways to remove hard in a game. Just getting a 5th. We'll see if you can run 2 of these. You might not be able to, but you can definitely run 1. In a deck where you're trying to hurt all your own things to enrage them with and like have like frothing berserkers and stuff, this will also be pretty good. Because then you can, really get that Throbbing Berserker insane, unless you accidentally kill it. That's the scary part about this card. Maybe you'll kill your own minion, which it won't be great. But I mean, if it's an Acolyte and it gets hit 3 times, I don't think you're going to be complaining too much about that. Armor Smiths as well, they get hit a lot, and you gain a lot of armor off of it. The one thing I'm really wondering about is what happens when this is out with Commanding Shout in your same turn, because Commanding Shout is all your minions can't be reduced below 1 health this turn. So, I mean, you wouldn't do this, but if you had a board with just your minions on it, none of your opponents, well, you might if you wanted them to take damage, and then you did this Bouncing Blade. I think what I've heard is that everything will go down to 1 health, and then the Bouncing Blade will stop, because Commanding Shout means nothing. None of your minions can be reduced below 1 health. So that's a cool combo. You put down Thralling and Acolyte and Armor Smith, and you Commanding Shout, and you Bouncing Blade. Obviously, you can't do it all in the same turn, and then a lot of damage, a lot of perks for yourself. This card's really good, and it's going to create some really interesting scenarios, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So I was just previewing all the GVG cards so far, as of November 30th, 2012. Hopefully it'll be out soon, and any other cards that come out, I plan on doing a little video on, at least if I feel strongly enough about them. If it's just a simple card like the Shield Maiden, probably not, but there's some cards I really think are really interesting, and I'm really excited to see how they pan out. So thanks for watching all these videos if you did, or just this one. If you want to watch the other ones, feel free if you haven't. And subscribe, because I'm planning on doing some more Hearthstone content on this. Just Hearthstone content on this channel. So thank you. And comment below on your opinions on these cards, because I was very passionate about them, and maybe you feel passionately the exact opposite way I do, or the same, whatever.